Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Under the Banner of Heaven. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. We ended up getting a lot of revelations in this episode. First and foremost, all of Sam's declarations that he was chosen to be as kind of like he's not the one chosen one, but he is a soldier enacting the chosen one's will, which is enacting the Lord's will. And he's making it seem like he's the one that killed Brenda and Erica, but he wasn't. Because he's like, yeah, I killed Erica and laid her right beside her mom or something like that. But it's like, no, that's not the case. Also, the blood that was found on your clothes wasn't even Brenda or Erica's. It was Squirrel's blood. So, and he's talking about, I don't know. It's hard to say whether Sam is... It seems like Sam's just kind of not in the right mind. And how much does him... I mean... Because Robin seems... Yes, he's a part of all this, but it seems he has more of his faculties about him than Sam does. So... they end up, obviously, finding the Lows. Obviously, the deputy from last episode finding Bishop Lowe, and we find out that both Dan and Ron were excommunicated. Dan was excommunicated because his wife Matilda, last episode, up and down trying to convince his wife Matilda that they need to start practicing polygamy because it's the right way. It's the old teachings, trying to bring Mormonism back to where it was before and rather where it should be. We've cast aside our old ways, now knowing the full truth of the past and everything, saying like, right, we need to kind of go down this path, even saying like, it's not just for my sake, this is for your sake too, trying to convince her. Well, now, it's not, he's trying to get, apparently it's his stepdaughters, not his biological daughters, but doesn't change the fact is, he's trying to make them, his wives. And obviously Matilda, not too happy about that, understandably and rightfully so, to the point she ended up helping her daughters escape. But the problem is that, because even Dan was threatening her, it's kind of like, almost like, right, you standing against the Lord's will, you know what that means, right? You know what the punishment is. And she's like, death. It's like, yes. So he's like, please do not let me have to imagine a life without you. So she had to submit. But she managed to get her daughters out of there. The question then being, because we still don't know whatever happened to Matilda after that. Because Dan, upon finding out they were gone, he was far from happy. He already threatened that he would kill her. Now, who says he hasn't already? So, the thing is, though, the bishop didn't involve child services or anything. What he did is he put them in a good home, but eventually they ran away. It's like, of course they would, because they're probably worried about their mom, so they probably went back to see, what happened to Matilda, and probably ended up, Dan probably got a hold of them in the process. So it's like, you didn't protect those children. And it ends up being this thing of, it was almost like, right, the church already had enough, especially the Laffertys. The Laffertys are the golden family amongst the LDS in this town. And so they'd already gone through so much with just everything Dan was up to. And also, once again, Ron was kind of more so the golden child. Him kind of going through what he was going through. So they didn't want to stay. It became more about the church's reputation and what negative attention this would have drawn. And we see this throughout the series so far, and especially in this episode, trying to shift the narrative from being what it really is, to hide the ugly truth of not only the church's past, which, once again, every religion's got its dirty past, So, but it became more so about protecting that than rather than the people. Because Ron's excommunication was about him abusing his wife, Diana. And that's the thing that now you also see why Brenda was so much of a hindrance. And especially in this new direction, this very fundamentalist direction that Ron and Dan and Robin and Sam were heading in, is because she's the one that kind of convinced Diana to kind of speak up, because they were talking to the bishop and Ron were talking, because the bishop refused to tell Ron why Dan was excommunicated. Maybe if he had, would it have changed anything? I don't know. I don't know how okay with all that Ron would have been. Even would he have seen like, oh, that's kind of messed up, or would he have been like, you know, Dan has studied our teachings, and this is what they called to him to do, then this is what they called to him. Like, would he justify? And at the beginning, I was like, if you had told Ron the truth, maybe you could have avoided later aftermath of things. But, like, once again, Ron was already down the wrong path. But maybe telling him the truth could have stopped everything, or maybe he would have doubled down. Because throughout the entire episode, they refused to tell, because Ron kept believing that it was because of his anti-taxes positioning and running for sheriff. That's where Ron believes that's why Dan got excommunicated. It's like, no, he was trying to... And I love that he, once again, tries to say, like, oh, the fortification of Mormonism would be Matilda kind of standing in the way. And not just, like, the terribleness of, like, trying to marry both of your stepdaughters who are, as Jeb points out later on, you can tell they're fairly young, but Jeb puts it in perspective, even more in perspective, by giving you the exact ages of 12 and 14. So you're like, yeah. Like I said, I honestly don't know if Ron would have backed down, even knowing that truth. Because admitting it to anyone, even if it was like, no, it's Dan's business. It's like, no. I think everyone should probably know what Dan was trying to do, but they're trying to, because if they tarnish Dan's name, it tarnishes, once again, it's that conversation of, right, Mormonism has had, you know, they'll talk about in the confines of this story that Mormonism had to do a lot to separate itself from the fundamentalists, you know, because most people some of the history of Mormonism, they'll only look at like the more fundamentalist angles like polygamy, and you're like, no, that's not what we're about. Like, don't get it twisted. So people weren't always looking after, it was more so about the collective's well-being rather than the individuals. It's kind of what that is, and that's the horrible situation. Even Bishop Lowe's wife was telling Diana, and I love the way Bill just lays out. He's like, whoa, so you told the victim of abuse to basically try harder. And like Jeb had to kind of like give Bill the nod to like not push too hard, because if they push too hard, they probably won't get any more answers out of them. But it's like, you didn't do enough to protect his family. Like, everyone, like, played their roles in being culpable for everything going down, because not a lot of people stepped in when they should have. Even later on, Jeb he goes home to his wife and tries to go home to his wife and kids later on. But when he goes home, he's like, doesn't hear anything from Rebecca or the children or his mom. He pulls out his gun because he's scared. He's worried that, like, right, like, because Sam even talked about, like, earlier in the episode about, he referenced, like, oh, I'll come for your family, so they basically can't get into the eternity kingdom of heaven. So he was worried, like, right, like, because I am investigating this, what if they come for my family? Luckily, they were at Bishop Young's, and Bishop Young is the one that was, which makes you wonder, like, there's probably not a correlation there. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Whether or not he's related to Brigham Young, like whether he's like a descendant or not. But Jeb sees through it later on. Well, even in that moment, he sees it. Luckily, he talks to Rebecca, everything's fine, everything's good. But he sees what it is. The church is trying to get him back in line. As he says, they're trying to write the narrative of what is publicly known, so they're trying to like rein him back in, because it's like, yeah, you're being a little too outspoken, even because you're telling the truth about what's going on, and we don't want that perception out there. Even later on, the stake president showed up trying to get both Robin and Sam released, which Jeb already kind of accounted for that, because neither one of them could be held for because there was no evidence that suggested they were behind Brenda and Erica's murder, so they couldn't be held anyway. But because Sam referenced the School of Prophets, and then they heard a little bit more about it from Robin, and they found one of the bearded people with them was Bernard. Went to go talk to Bernard. I was so uneasy with Bernard because of the way he was like smile, like him and his wife, like they're having this casual conversation on top of talking about the Diana and Ron situation. That even later on was like, yeah, Ron, he really studied down to try and change. It's like, once again, it's like, yeah, I'm a prey on it. It's just like, it just seems like every time you turn around, people are making excuses and like swerving. No one stepped in the way that they should have. They went about a very half-assed, roundabout way of handling things. And that's like the most frustrating aspect in the story, is just like the way everyone handled everything. It's just like no one kind of put their foot down and did kind of what was, once again, it felt like it was more so what's right for the whole rather than the individuals that are caught up in everything. And maybe if people had stepped in at the right times, then maybe a lot of these tragedies could have been prevented. There's also the aspect of, you could maybe make the argument, say that it goes back to their father. The way their father handled a lot of stuff, which Ron calls him out for at the end of the episode, a lot of his way of handling things, but he's a product too of how things are kind of run, how the household is supposed to be run, the man's position, the wife's position, that it created this monster, which created further monsters in its own regard, of just like no one was kind of put in check. And once again, especially because the Laffertys were seen as this golden family too, so I doubted he was ever going to be put in check. So it's almost like no wonder his children kind of like broke a little and ended up going to such extremist lengths. And, you know, it seems almost like they were destined for that route. And I think the episode does a really good job of showcasing, like, there's a lot of history repeating itself from the early days of Mormonism to even currently in its present day in the story, that everything's kind of coming full circle, that everything's paralleling and mirroring each other. So, but like I say, circling back to it, the whole Bernard situation, it's just, but even then, it's just kind of like, right, she's like, if I promised Ron if he ever brought violence upon Diana again, or, you know, his family, that I would call the police. It's like, but why didn't you do it? Like, that's always the thing of, like, there was these threats of it, but never, like, any action upon it. So, because Ron got his letter of excommunication, he took it out on Diana and their daughter, and he even tried to leave with one of their kids, one of their sons, and she pulled a knife on him and was like, leave him and go and never come back. And I think he was shaken by it, because I think in that moment, and that in a moment like that where someone is lost like that, he's not in his right mind. He's kind of lost everything. He lost the church. He lost his family, because later on he does get excommunicated. Once again, maybe if they had told him the truth about Dan's circumstances, maybe that would have shifted. Because no one knew. The only people who knew were like the church about why he actually got excommunicated. Dan in particular. Because even Bernard didn't know, so later on, Jeb is like, do you know why Dan got excommunicated? No, it wasn't about taxes. He was trying to marry his two stepdaughters. And Bernard was almost like, wait, what? And I think that was the first time Alan's hearing about that too, like knowing how far his brothers have fallen and probably blaming himself as like, maybe if I'd done something differently, Brenda and Erica would be all right. Like, maybe I could have kept, he blames himself for not doing a better job at keeping Brenda away from all of this, and just his family wasn't what it has become now. But to be fair, maybe for him, it's like, I didn't see things for what they really were. Just like Jeb. Jeb's eyes are finally open to just everything that's going around him, that a lot of us have turned a blind eye, and maybe our eyes were blinded by the church only letting us see peeks into what was really going on, because they wanted to keep the truth hidden, because they wanted to be the ones controlling the narrative of how the church was going to be perceived, and the negative connotations and negative reputation they would have had because of a lot of stuff with Dan and Ron, but I mean a lot of the Lafferty stuff. And we also found out that Bernard, he was a part of this school of prophets, and he'd basically written himself a letter and sent it to himself. It was notarized and everything, because he was trying to protect himself in case anything ever went wrong. And that's Jeb and Bill jumped down his throat for it, rightfully so, that you could have done the right thing coming to us, but rather than, what did you do? You did some self-serving crap to protect yourself in case anything happened, because you knew it was a possibility. Because Brenda wasn't on the list of people that they're potentially going to shed their blood. But Diana, so it's like, right, we got to find her. If she isn't already dead, she is a target. So they go about the farm situation. And I really like that Alan kind of puts things in certain perspectives when he talks about, like, no, there's no school of prophets. There's never one, like, anytime there's ever been multiple camps, it's always been one true prophet. There's only been one true school. And so he talks about the history because, Bernard had talked about Emma's transgressions, that basically she had poked her nose in Joseph Smith's business and she shouldn't have, and kind of saying everything kind of fell apart because of that, because she got a newspaper to write about what he was doing, and Joseph then had that newspaper attacked, which got the government involved. He's the one that set everything in motion. So, but now it was a situation of, she sent a letter for to give to Joseph, but Brigham Young intercepted that and had a message passed on to Joseph, but adding a single line to it: come back and basically turn yourself in and face your judgment, essentially. But that's not what she wanted. She wanted him that, like, right, given enough time, he'll come back to the path of light and the Lord will protect you again. She didn't want him to come back because she knew what was going to happen to him. But Brigham Young was trying to believe himself to be, no, I know what's right for this. One again, it was like him and Taylor were working together to point things in the right direction again. So manipulating Joseph into returning, and everything kind of cascaded from there. As we see at the end of the episode, the attack, Joseph got it pretty brutally. I don't know if that's, once again, I'm assuming that's true to Mormonism history, the whole Joseph Smith thing, but getting shot like that multiple times, then getting stabbed. There have been points in history where, like, history gets brutal like that. Like, oh, we're going to, like, severely mess up your body afterwards. It's like, some cases it's been done to people who are classified as, like, terrible human beings, but it's still just, like, the brutality of that is crazy. And obviously, Brigham Young managed to survive the whole ordeal. He's the one that ended up setting so much of that in motion, but at the end of the day, they would end up blaming Emma for it. I'm sure it's like, no, you're the reason why things have cascaded to this point. A wife not following her husband, but it's also like, right, everyone's an opportunist and sees this situation as an opportunity to take advantage of it to put themselves in a position where they believe themselves to truly need to be. It's like, right, I need to be the head of all of this. I need to be the true the one true leader of it all. And so the moment that got introduced, my immediate thought was like, oh, does that mean Ron's going to end up killing Dan? So is Dan dead? But it's like, no, everything already got passed to Ron anyway by Dan, was it last episode? So I don't think that's an issue. Well, we find out the true meaning of that, because when Ron had absolutely nothing left, he went home and he scared the living crap out of his children. His daughter was like, hide, and she was cutting up her father's, like, sacred, like, shirt or whatever, and he gave the watch to his son, and he's just kind of like, you know what this means? And sometimes he's like, people are going to persecute you, but I think he believes it in his own mind that this is all a test. And so he went to his home, and his mom is saying, like, right, but you're on the right path again, you're right where you belong. And Ron took his mother's words. I don't think that was her intention. I mean, maybe it was, but I don't think that was her intention. But Ron basically didn't kill his dad, but he helped push him off this he helped nudge him off this mortal coil. God, I couldn't get the word mortal out. And he talked about it. He's like, right. He's like, oh, I need a doctor. It's like, no, you don't need a doctor. If you need a doctor, you're not praying hard enough. The Lord will look after you, right? It's like, yeah, you said the same thing to Jacob when Jacob got sick. And it's like, okay, so we get a little more into Jacob's circumstances, which we still don't know where he is in all of this. when you were abusing mom. And then also our dog that you brutally murdered with a baseball bat. He's like, I watched. Yeah, it's like, Mom, yeah, she healed. Jacob, he healed. Granted, his brain was never the same. But our dog, I looked in our dog's eyes when it died in such pain because of you. And he was doing the same thing for his father. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna look in your eyes as you die painfully. You know? Once again, his father set so much stuff in motion himself by the way he handled things. But once again, it was their father just a byproduct of everything that was going on. Because I think the same and sad cycle kind of repeating itself with Ron, because him abusing Diana like that. That is like, right, when you are... It is, I think the psychological damage and that could happen of being abused, you can... You know, when you get frustrated, like it's easy to slip into that just because this is how things were handled. You grew up in a household that's like, right, the husband is the leader of the family. He shouldn't be questioned. So when he dishes out something like that, and once again, the church probably never stepped in, just kind of like the Diana thing. Because even when Ron was getting excommunicated, what was the first thing they brought up? It was you were threatening your bishop, and then it's like. And there's the home violence. It's like, it almost sounded like you tacked that on. Like, it's like, the biggest sin you committed was threatening your bishop. And also abuse your wife. It seemed like that became secondary, so. And, because they did find at the farm when they did go there, because I had skipped over it a little bit, that they found that list and those 3 girls that were left there. No food, no electricity. They were FLDS that were kind of brought down, I think, from, they said Canada, BC, so I'm assuming British Columbia. And were just kind of left there. They hadn't seen Ron or Dan in a while. But it's like, the way they were referring to Ron, I was like, are they Ron's other wives? Is that what that whole situation was? I don't know. But the list was found... And they ultimately, Jeb and... Well, because Bernard told them when they weren't around Alan, because Alan saw the list and everything. He was like, no, there's no way my brother couldn't have written this. And he's got tears in his eye because he just didn't realize like how bad things had gotten. It was in the realm of possibilities that, you know, maybe Ron and them were responsible, but to know like... Maybe Dan was one thing, but Ron was another, being like, no, this can't be what's happened to my family, so... I guess kind of, well... I don't know. But Ron now sees himself as the true leader, once again, just kind of parallel... Because like I said, I like how they paralleled it at the end of the episode of just like, right, he's the modern-day Brigham Young, and now the question is... They have to find Ron because there is going to be more bloodshed. Once again, Diana, if she isn't already dead, he is going to catch up to her. So, whereas Dan in all of this, is he just going to be a follower of this as well? Was their brother Jacob in all of this? Is Ron the one who ended up killing Erica and Brenda? Seems like it, but that's why, like, before I said it, I think Jacob's the one who did it. I'm sure, like, his brothers convinced him, but we'll see if that ends up being the case. Once again, if Dan's alive, what about Matilda? We'll ultimately have to wait and see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good